Hi, everyone in North America, Europe, Romania, and anywhere in the world. Thank you for watching. We are fighting some technical problems. Probably this conversation would be, I'm afraid, half video, half podcast, because I must confess I have forgotten how challenging can sometimes be the internet connection in the UK, where our guest is residing currently. But hi again, everyone. Thank you for watching. For those who have celebrated Easter, Christ has risen, Christos Anviat, we are very, very happy to continue our online version of the Leon FERARU conferences, one of our permanent programs that gives a voice to Romanian scholarship in all things American, and creates a platform for transatlantic intellectual dialogue. We are very, very thankful for the excellent response we've received after the last program, when we had a very interesting conversation with Pen Romania President Radu Vancu about pro and anti-Americanism, and we are very, very excited that that there have been so many reactions, so many messages. We are broadcasting ourselves like everybody else these days, but we believe that somehow we are doing something good. The topic of today's conversation is Nicolae Ceaușescu's spy games in the United States, and I hope these technical problems are in any way related to this topic, but they are what they are, like technical issues. Honored to have as guest Professor Dennis Deletant, one of the greatest specialists in Romanian studies, Romanian history, Romanian society in the Western world, a scholar who has devoted practically all his life to Romanian studies, and a man who speaks Romanian so well that I can only regret that this conversation is not taking place in Romania, so you can witness the beautiful Romanian Professor Deletant speaks. Professor Deletant is a professor at Georgetown University, an emeritus professor at University College London's famous, prestigious School of Slavonic and East European Studies. He is Doctor Honoris Causa of many Romanian universities, of course, one of most of the big ones, and was made an officer of the Order of the British Empire, one of the greatest distinctions bestowed to a British national. He is also a recipient of the National Order of the Star of Romania, one the most prestigious Romanian civilian distinction, and is an author of several books on Romanian history and Romanian aspects of Romanian society. I would say that his books practically cover a great deal of Romanian contemporary history, the dictatorship history of Romania, or a history of contemporary dictatorships, starting, of course, with Marshal Antonescu's dictatorship, and the book is called History's Forgotten Ally. Continuing with a book about Romania under Gheorghe Gheorghiu Dej, communist terror in Romania. Of course, the famous Ceaușescu and the Securitate, an overview of the dealings of Romania's secret political police. He recently published what I would call one of the best accounts on Romanian communism. I hope you can see it. Romania under Communist Paradox and the Generation, a must-read for all students and scholars in Romanian affairs. A fantastic synthesis and very thick. So we will spend a lot of time in isolation, or a lot of time in isolation will just go away by taking this book and reading. And by the time you are over, the isolation is lifted, and other books and many studies. Professor Deletant, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Dorian. Thank you for the invitation and for that very generous introduction.
We only can hear you, I'm afraid, but sometimes from time to time we will see some movement. But again, the connection is not very good. But the fact that we can hear you, it's I think it's a great plus. I can't refrain myself. I can't. I have the urge to start by asking you, looking at so many amazing books about Romanian studies, by asking you, what are you working on right now? Is there something new on the pipeline?
I returned from Cluj, in fact, just before the lockdown in Romania at the beginning of March, where I'd been present at the launch of the latest volume, which I had been working on. In fact, it's a volume about Iuliu Maniu's contacts with the British, which I co-authored with two very dear friends of mine in Cluj, Professor George Ciprianu and Otilo Varga. We worked for some 2 years on this volume, which is written around documents both from the Romanian archives, but especially from the British archives, and Maniu's correspondence with members of the British Secret Service during the war, and the efforts to help a Romanian opposition during the war years, and to encourage Romania to withdraw from the war under conditions that were not entirely favorable to Romania.
Right. So you are active as ever, but I will. Of course, the topic of our conversation is Nicolae Ceaușescu's secret operation in the United States, the Securitate, the fierce Securitate in the United States. But I would start by talking a little bit about the context of the Cold War and of the Romanian-American relationship during the Cold War.
Well, relations between the US and Romania are defined by, in fact, the subtitle of the book, whose cover you kindly showed, Dorian. In other words, Paradox and Degeneration. The first part of the Cold War, let's say the decade of the 1950s, was characterized very much by American awareness, of course, that Romania at the time was firmly entrenched in the Soviet bloc, and therefore US relations were really subordinate to the broader picture of American relations with the Soviet Union. But as Gheorghe Udej began to steer Romania on an autonomous course at the beginning of the 1960s. So Romania began to figure more prominently in American calculations about its policy towards the communist world. And the major turning point in the reevaluation of the US view of Romania was Ceaușescu's denunciation in August 1968 of the Warsaw Pact invasion of Czechoslovakia. The US sought to promote Romania, to exploit Romania in a sense, as a thorn in the side of the Soviet Union. And Ceaușescu was very skillful in helping the Americans to form a positive view of Romania's autonomous course. And one of the turning points there was the visit of President Nixon to Romania in August 1969, which was followed up very rapidly by the first state visit of a communist leader to the United States in 1970, and that visit was carried out by Nicolae Ceaușescu. In 1975, such was the US support of Romania that President Ford granted Romania most favored nation status, which meant that it was able to benefit from lower tariffs for its exports to the United States. And this was a major achievement at the time for any communist country, any communist leader, since it showed that Romania enjoyed a special status with the United States. However, that positive view of Romania began to be undermined as Ceaușescu introduced his very draconian austerity measures at the beginning of the 1980s in Romania, and also by the ascent to power of Mikhail Gorbachev in March 1985, because Gorbachev, in fact, began to pursue policies which Ceaușescu himself had advocated on the international stage, namely a complete withdrawal of the Soviet Union from Afghanistan, reduction of short-range nuclear weapons in Europe, and of course the promotion of perestroika and glasnost. And Ceaușescu's reluctance to perform any perestroika or glasnost drew criticism from Gorbachev, and this eventually led to his isolation, effectively both from the Soviet Union and the Western world. So it is in that broad context that we need to see US-Romanian relations.
So we can see roughly 3 or 4 periods in this relationship. The Stalinist years, then the independent cause, the détente, and then the final years, the isolation and the fall of Ceaușescu. Before we get to the specifics, in general, what role did Securitate play in foreign affairs and in diplomacy per se?
Well, first of all, we have to remind ourselves of the purpose of the Securitate, which was to maintain the Communist Party as the sole power in the Romanian state, in the Romanian People's Republic. In fact, in the founding charter of the Securitate, which was drawn up in August 1948, it states that the role of the Securitate was to defend the conquest of the Romanian People's Republic, which effectively meant that Romania was certifying itself as a police state. Your listeners will know of the repression that the Securitate was ordered to carry out in order to maintain communism in Romania. But in foreign affairs, the Securitate in the decade really up until the early 1960s acted in support of the KGB. In fact, it carried out some of the KGB's designs against the United States and NATO, most notably the actions of Mihai Karaman, who was the Romanian attaché in Paris and who in 1962 recruited one of the French librarians at NATO headquarters and persuaded him or paid him to hand over hundreds of highly sensitive NATO documents. Karaman's activities carried on until 1969, when his activity was uncovered as a result of the defection of his deputy in Paris, Colonel Iacobescu, and therefore he was withdrawn from Paris shortly afterwards. So in the 1960s then, Romania still, as regards the Foreign Intelligence Service, worked really to a degree to a script prepared by the KGB. But after the autonomous stance of Romania became more evident, so the KGB itself began attempting to spy on the Romanian Secret Service. And it was to counter this that the Romanians set up in 1978 their directorate known as 0110 to combat intelligence activities conducted by fellow Warsaw Pact states against Romania. As regards activities in the United States, from what we know, both from Romanian sources and the US sources, and notably FBI records, Romanian activity was rather low-key. Their main purpose was to promote the image of Ceaușescu as this valiant leader standing up to the Soviet Union. And in doing so, they monitored, that is, the representatives of the Securitate at the US Embassy and its consulate, monitored very closely the actions of the Romanian diaspora in the US, and on several occasions actually financing publication of pro-Ceaușescu literature and indeed public activities. But of course, there was the defection of General Ion Pacepa in July 1978 that threw the activities of the intelligence arm of the Securitate, in other words, the Direcția de Informații Externe, it threw them into confusion and effectively neutered any Romanian espionage activity in the US after 1978.
So as the Securitate was modeled after the Soviet secret political police, even up to the 60s, the operations were very much guided by the KGB. But can we talk about cooperation later than the 60s, or it was complete disjunction of objectives and methods and tasks?
There was a certain amount of cooperation in the sense that the United States was very keen to have intelligence on certain Middle Eastern states. And because Romania enjoyed close relations with most of those states, largely because it had Romanian engineers working in the oil fields in several states in the Middle East. So those engineers who were often under the direction of working in close alliance with the Romanian foreign intelligence, they were able to provide information which the United States found useful, and indeed the Romanian intelligence service passed it on. So in that sense, there was a degree of cooperation, but we should not forget that part of the remit, part of the tasks of the Securitate under Ceaușescu after the beginning of the 1970s was to counter, to negate criticism of Ceaușescu, which had appeared in the broadcast of Radio Free Europe, which, although based in Munich, was financed by the US government. And so many of the actions, the operations of the DIE, that is the foreign intelligence, were directed against Romanian emigres working for Radio Free Europe in Munich. And some of these activities were, we would describe them today as terrorist activities. For example, the attack on Monica Lovinescu in November 1977, where she was savagely beaten by two members of the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, who've been hired by the then head of the DIE, the Foreign Intelligence. Shortly after, or 4 years after that, another employee of Romanian Free Europe was attacked, was stabbed, in fact, 21 times, as far as I recall, in Munich. And again, we now know that this operation was carried out by some 3 French citizens who'd been paid by the Romanian Foreign Intelligence Service. Another action which disturbed very much American-Romanian relations was the support that the DIE gave to Carlos the Jackal, the international terrorist, because they provided a safe house for him and his wife and a close associate, Jakob Weinrich, in 1980 and 1981. I ought to add here that Romania was not the only state that provided a haven for Carlos the Jackal and his activities. But again, of course, this activity disrupted relations between the United States and Romania.
So you claim that a lot of the operations were in fact on the American soil, were in fact propaganda and or counter propaganda. Was there any interest in economic information, as the foreign services were quite tasked in gathering this type of valuable intelligence for the Romanian industry?
Yeah, there were attempts to gather technical information, technological information. Indeed, this was one of the tasks that General Pacepa had when he was deputy head of the DIE, of the Securitate. But the FBI were very aware of the Romanian attempts to find such information. You're right, Dorian, to point to the activity of the Romanian commercial bureaus that there were in the United States, in various cities, in various U.S. cities. And indeed, the members of, or several of the members of these commercial bureaus were officers of the foreign intelligence of Romania. So given that fact, which was known, of course, to the United States, to the FBI in particular, so a close watch was kept on the activities of members of the Commercial Bureau, and also on any visitors from the Ministry of Foreign Trade in Romania, because many of the employees of the Ministry of Foreign Trade were, let's call them associates of the Securitate.
In what happened in America after after the defection of Mihai Pacepa, who gave a huge blow to Romanian foreign service? How affected was the secret operation here in the United States?
Well, first of all, Pacepa wasn't a spy. I think we need to clarify that. So he defected. He wasn't a spy, and we know that. We know that from American sources. So his value to the Americans and indeed to the wider Western world was that he uncovered the names of the 570 officers of the DIE who were working abroad at the time of his defection in the summer of 1978. At the same time, there were more than 1,000 members of the Ministry of Foreign Trade who traveled regularly to Western countries, whom, as I've just said, were associates, we might say associate members of the Securitate, and Pacepa divulged the names of many senior figures in the Ministry of Foreign Trade. The result of his defection was effectively to destroy the Romanian espionage network, not only in the United States, but in the Western world generally. And there followed a wave of departures of Romanian embassy personnel from embassies in the Western world after Pacepa's defection.
Please tell us a bit about the American reaction to Ceaușescu's spy games in the United States. How did they react? What were the ways to counteract these activities?
The reactions were very diplomatic, I would say, because we have to bear in mind that Ceaușescu enjoyed special status with the United States politically. He'd been granted, as I said earlier, most favored nation status in 1975. So the Americans, in a sense, were rather indulgent of Romanian attempts to carry out espionage. But, of course, as Ceaușescu became more entrenched in Romania, more isolated, and also became more intransigent in his economic policies, which had these disastrous effects for the Romanian population in the 80s. So U.S. diplomacy began to harden towards Ceaușescu. Of course, after Gorbachev came to power, Ceaușescu lost his usefulness as a so-called thorn in the side of the Soviets. And he really began to self-isolate, to use a contemporary term, because of the fact that Western countries were aware of the austerity measures which were having such a crippling effect on the Romanian economy and, of course, on Romanian citizens.
What happened after the fall of the Iron Curtain? What was the situation on the ground, and what happened in the first years after that with all these operations?
The operations themselves were largely directed to the commercial sphere and the operations of the Securitate. So many of the Romanian trading companies in the communist period were staffed by foreign intelligence officers, and the proceeds from the sale of arms, for example, sale of other goods, were placed in banking accounts, some in Romania in the Romanian Bank of Foreign Trade, but others in foreign banks, in Swiss banks in particular. Now, these officers were in an excellent position after the fall of Ceaușescu to use their contacts, to use the money, the accounts that they were aware of in the Bank of Foreign Trade, to use that money to go into business themselves and to start the private sector or part of the private sector in Romania after 1990. The Romanian government did make an attempt in early 1990 to trace the funds of these Securitate-controlled trading companies, and they did engage a firm of Canadian forensic accountants to look into the affairs of these trading companies. But the Canadians did their job too well, and in the summer of 1990, the Romanian government itself blocked further investigation by the forensic accountants of these accounts and of these companies, which had morphed into private companies effectively.
The United States was of course very involved in the Romanian transition from a communist dictatorship, command economy to a democracy, a Western style democracy, a liberal democracy, and a private economy, capitalistic economy. How the transition affected the in terms of the foreign services and Romanian presence in the United States?
The activities of Romanian services, both the internal service and the SRA and the SIE, as it's now called, these really fell into line, broadly speaking, with the requirements of membership, first of all for NATO, and then secondly for membership of the European Union. So what we find is the United States and its allies were helping Romania to introduce some form of democratic oversight to the activities of both the SRA and the SIE. And it has to be recognized that to a degree, both those services took on board the recommendations of the US, of the UK, of France, of some of the other NATO allies in reforming their security and intelligence services. I would say that the FIE, the Foreign Intelligence Service, is pretty widely regarded, highly regarded in the Western world. The SRI has a very difficult task in Romania in that it still has this legacy of controlling economic units of companies indeed. And it's rare for a Western domestic security agency to have its own businesses, because of course this can affect in a negative way competition in the state. If you have your internal security service controlling bidding for contracts against non-security services, so it's going to be very difficult for those non-domestic security services to increase their footprint in a country like Romania.
And I would say that Romania and the United States are bound by a very strong strategic partnership. And in line with what you said, I think the security and political aspects of the strategic partnership obviously very strong and are always praised by the American counterparts, which means that there is not only a strong collaboration, but a very a deep one, and very very unproblematic, very unproblematic one. Of course, we have gone a long way from the time of Ceaușescu. Obviously, there is no comparison. But going back to Ceaușescu's time, how do you assess the overall Securitate's activity in the United States during these 45 years of communist rule?
Well, from the evidence I've been able to see, I would say that their performance was a very negative one. I mean, they hardly produced any, I would say, earth-shattering espionage results from the United States. As we've already mentioned, the major success of their own espionage was in the 1960s, and that was under the direction of the KGB anyway. And then afterwards, since the focus of the Securitate was very much in the United States on the Romanian community, on the Romanian diaspora, so we might argue that given the activities of the diaspora in that period, the Securitate wasn't successful at all, because we know there were a multitude of protests raised by the Romanian diaspora against the invitation launched by the American administration to Ceaușescu to come to the United States. Let's not forget, Ceaușescu conducted not just one state visit to the United States, but 3. This is unprecedented for a communist leader. Even one was unprecedented, let alone 3. So in terms of influencing American public opinion itself, the Securitate didn't need to do very much. But as I say, their activities were more concerned with the diaspora, who were aware of the repression taking place in Romania in the communist period overall, and the fact that Ceaușescu's domestic policies have become so intrusive and so debilitating for the Romanian citizen that led the diaspora to raise their voice against these state visits, which were seen as a validation of Ceaușescu's policies as a whole.
So yeah, we can tell that we can say that while the foreign policy was quite successful, at least for a decade or so, it was for completely other reasons than the operations of the external service of the Securitate. Again, I'd like to apologize for the quality of the transmissions. Our partner Transconcentric has done wonders to at least have this conversation due to the very poor signal from the internet connection in England. I would like to remind all our viewers that everything we do at the Romanian Cultural Institute in New York during this time is dedicated to doctors, nurses, essential personnel, especially Romanian-American and Romanian-Canadian, who are doing a wonderful job. We admire your courage. We applaud your determination, and we dedicate everything we do to you because this is essential, fantastic work to keep us safe and effectively fight against the pandemic. I would also take this opportunity to remind you about some future broadcasts in this series of broadcasts that we have launched. Tomorrow evening, we have the pleasure to broadcast a recital with pianist and composer Teo Milea, one of the best-known Romanian musicians in North America. Teo will perform only his own compositions. Everything we do, most of the content that we put out during this time is original and exclusive, so you are not able to see Teo Milea's recital anywhere else but on our Facebook and then on our social media accounts. Also, the next time in the Leon FERARU conferences online, we will be talking about God in foreign relations, and we will assess how religion impacted the Romanian-American relations in the company of scholar, researcher Ana Șincan. Again, I'd like to thank Professor Dennis Deletant for this fantastic conversation, albeit in this rather poor technical condition. I say it from the beginning, it's going to be half podcast, half video. But what is more important is the input and these observations that are truly valuable for us to understand the Romanian-American contemporary history and the history of our relations are, of course, very, very different now. They were during communist time and for the better, much for the better. And I like to thank Dennis Deletant once more. Maybe we'll have the chance to have you more animated in our future broadcast.
Thank you very much, Dorian, for the invitation.
And thank to all our viewers. Again, Hristos a înviat, Christ has risen. To all
Adevărat a înviat.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that we can hear something in Romanian from you then. Hristos a înviat, Christ has risen. To all our viewers, take care of yourselves. Stay safe and stay in touch. Thank you.
La toți telespectatorii le urez petreacă zilele următoare cu sănătate.
Thank you. Sănătate și ție și alor tăi.